Okay, so we're still in Exodus, and today we're going to be jumping into Leviticus just a little bit. Just a little side thing on Leviticus. Leviticus deals with primarily deals with the dietary laws, the keeping of the Sabbath, the particular laws. And so when you hear about the Levitical system, how to worship, how to do the sacrifices, all of that stuff is talked about in the book of Leviticus. And so we'll jump into Leviticus just a little bit there. One of the things to remember about where we're at in the history of the children of Israel. And we call them the children of Israel for a reason. Because they were, in effect, they were like children. They had to be taught. Think about how you and I raised our kids, right? Or our grandkids, or, church kids. The things that we instill in them, right and wrong, that you get up at a certain time, you go to bed at a certain time. You teach them about, with regard to church, you teach them the fundamentals about the Ten Commandments, the love of Jesus, the ministry of Jesus, all of those things. Well, the same thing applies to the children of Israel. Remember, they're going from 450 years of bondage to freedom. And he's preparing them for when they enter the promised land. He's preparing them for their future, which is what we do with kids, right? That's what parents do with kids, is we train them. The Bible verse, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he won't depart from it. Training, okay? They were, and God would refer to them at several points during the wilderness wandering, as a stiff-necked people, stubborn and stiff-necked people. That they sometimes insisted on doing things their way, and when they insisted on doing things their own way, they paid the price for that. So where we're going to pick up this morning in Exodus, a lot of things have happened. There has been the golden calf issue. Remember, God said, "You will not have any other gods before me." They got impatient with Moses, getting the Ten Commandments, and they created the golden calf, and God punished them for that. "You will have no other gods before me." They have instituted, by the time you get to chapter 22, there's been the institution of the tabernacle, the forerunner of the temple, and in fact, that becomes the central. So wherever they remember in Exodus, in the wilderness wanderings, they're nomadic. So everywhere they go, they pack up this tent, which is part of the tabernacle. They pack it up. All the stuff, he gives them an outline of what's to be in there, exactly where it's supposed to be put, all the different furnishings and what it's supposed to be made of, all of that stuff. Again, remember, the tabernacle is the precursor to the temple. But the tabernacle during this period of history was meant to be, put up and torn down, put up and torn down. If you've ever tent camped, whenever we tent camped back when the boys were smaller, we might stay, a night or two at a certain place, usually in Colorado, a certain place, and then pick up and go to another place, stay there a night or two, and then go to another, kind of like being nomadic. And if you've ever done that, that's a chore. So you can imagine what it would be like with these people. And the tabernacle, when you consider where the tents were lined up and everything, the tabernacle was in the center. Now, why do you think it would be in the center of the encampment? Why?
Should be the center of their lives,
Mm-hmm.
and of all of the tribes.
Exactly. I may have mentioned this in here before. Let me mention it again if I haven't. That's why particularly when you go to most evangelical churches, you will see the pulpit not off to the side, but in the center, okay, of the platform. And the reason for that is that most evangelical churches see the preaching of the word as central, okay? So there's a little bit of symbolism there, okay? Well, the same thing applied here. That the tabernacle precursor to, remember, the tabernacle had, just like the temple, had the holy place and the Holy of Holies. So the Holy of Holies was where God dwelt, okay? So it was the center. Wish it were that way today. It used to be, back in the 1800s, it used to be that way, that whenever a community was established, the first thing that went up was the church, because it served as both church and school, but it was in the central part of the town. Well, the same thing applies here. So that's what they're doing now, is they're putting up the tent, tearing it down, putting it up, tearing it down, moving, okay? In any society, the children of Israel are no different. In any society, you have the good guys and the bad guys. Not all of the children of Israel were good guys. And often you would see them in their history, you would see them taking advantage, I wanted to say abuse, but taking advantage of the lesser people in the community. When I'm talking about community, I'm talking about the children of Israel here. It's no different than today, right? People are exploited today, just like they were then. So that's all by way of introduction. I know that's a lengthy introduction, but that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I think it's no accident that today is Sanctity of Life Day. And so we're going to be looking at those who are more vulnerable, okay, and how the children of Israel, yes.
I just wanted to tell you, Kelly and Mama on.
Oh, great. Good to have you guys. Thanks for letting me know. All right, gather my thoughts. I lost my thought.
That's why I was trying to not interrupt you
No,
in the middle.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and so we're going to be talking about God setting out and remembering those less fortunate, those who would be prone to be exploited by the, put this in quotes, the stronger ones in the community. Okay? First of all, exploitation. Chapter 22, verses 21 and 24.
Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt. Do not take advantage of the widow or the fatherless. If you do, and they cry out to me, I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will be aroused, and I will kill you with the sword. Your wives will become widows, and your children fatherless.
Okay, there's a lot there. What's the first thing you think about when you look at the first part of verse 21? You must not exploit a resident alien or oppress him. Since you were resident aliens in the lands of Egypt. What's the first thing you think about?
Immigrants.
Yep. So be careful that people that you talk to that are knowledgeable of Scripture, don't take this out of context. This is not about what we're experiencing today. Now, there are those who would argue this applies to open borders. No. Watch what he's saying here. You must not exploit a resident alien. So there would be people, they were nomadic. Okay, the children of Israel weren't the only ones nomadic. Okay, there would be people who would be leaving an oppressive culture, and they would be and he's talking about in the future in the promised land. Excuse me. He's saying you were once aliens in Egypt, and think about how you were treated. The key word to look at here is exploitation. Okay, you must not. He doesn't just say don't exploit. You must not. This is a firm thing. Why would a resident alien be subjected to being oppressed? Why?
They have no support structure in place where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't know the lay of the land.
Yeah. There is a concept, it's a sociological concept called assimilation. Best example I can give of that, what it would be our grandkids. When they were adopted by JD and Hannah, and they came here to the United States, for the first few months, they couldn't understand us, and we could not understand them. They spoke Russian, okay? And JD had learned, and he had an app on his phone, but he learned enough. Yeah, he learned enough of the Russian language that he could communicate with them. And so it for them and us, it was a difficult few months, just understanding, the concept of I love you. Now remember, with those three, they came from an orphanage setting, so they hadn't heard those words until JD and Hannah got involved with them. They hadn't heard those words. But the more when they started going to school, and the more they were around us and their other grandparents, and around JD and Hannah and friends and family, the more they became assimilated into our culture. I remember vividly the first night when we picked them up at the airport. It was just Svieta and Olivia. We picked them up at the airport, and we were on our way home, and we stopped. I don't know if it was at a filling station or something. We stopped somewhere to get something to eat. And I remember.
I think it was the only fast food restaurant we could find that was still open.
Yeah, I remember. Particularly, I remember Svieta was just a little bitty.
She was 5.
And I remember picking her up and having her. Well, it just was something I did. Having her press, the little gizmos on the soda machines. You press it in, and she was playing with that. I was having her play with that. But the more when they got home, they were so used to, I want to say in quotes here, hoarding stuff because of the orphanage. You'd have stuff stolen. And their locker, they said their locker was just real small. So they became assimilated into our culture. They learned about family celebration, birthdays, anniversaries, Christmas, Thanksgiving, all of that. And slowly but surely, they began to learn the English dialect, the English language. Olivia and Loesch, they still have that kind of, the only way I know how to put it, Russian sound. Okay, when you listen to them talk, those two have more of the Russian sound to their words.
The accent.
The accent, maybe, yeah. So it's not, now, we ask them every once in a while, well, can you speak any Russian? And Svieta can't speak any. Olivia
will tell you no, and then maybe in the next sentence, there will come out a Russian word.
Yeah. Now they still call us babushka and dedushka, and that's we liked it that way. That's what we wanted to keep that instead of grandma and grandpa.
Olivia, when she's trying to get my attention, will call me
Yeah.
Grandma. Grandma.
But that's what I'm talking about here is don't exploit these people. Don't take advantage of them. Verse 22, you must not mistreat any widow or fatherless child. How would a widow, or let's just say an orphan, a fatherless child, may be with his mother, but not, remember, this was a patriarchal culture. So it's significant that Moses refers to, God is referring to the fatherless child. Well, how would they exploit a widow or a fatherless child? How could they do that?
Well, they have limited resources to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, because it's patriarchal, they would boss them around.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yep.
do this, you do that.
Yep.
And even though they're not their husband or, you know, even related to them maybe.
Prostitution would be a thing. It wasn't until, I think it was the 1920s, I could have that wrong, 1920s, I believe, where there was significant movement in the child labor law. Because up until that point, you know, kids would go to work in the mines, working in the mines, factories, yeah. But I think I could be wrong on that historically, but I think it was the 1920s when there was child labor reform. So they could literally make slaves of these aliens. They could make slaves of them, forgetting what their forefathers, if you will, experienced in Egypt. Now watch. If you do, now he's setting parameters, right? He's setting boundaries. If you do, if you do mistreat them, they will no doubt cry to me, and I will certainly hear their cry. Notice the way that's put. Remember back earlier in Exodus, remember what was said to the children of Israel at that time? God speaking to Moses says, I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. Same language is used here. Okay? Verse 24 says there's going to be a penalty if you do this. My anger will burn. Very strong language here. My anger will burn, and I will kill you with a sword. What? God killing something? Yeah. That's how seriously he took those who were less fortunate, or those, particularly he's talking here about the resident aliens. Okay? Now watch. I will. My anger will burn, and I will kill you with a sword. Then your wives will be widows, and your children, emphasis on that, your children will be fatherless. You want to do that to somebody else? There's going to be a price to pay. Period. Now, there's no wiggle room here. There's no wiggle room. Are children exploited today?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was all part of, I mean, for the people in the first service, most of the message was partly on Lifeline, since they're here today, and then exploitation of children, trafficking.
Yeah,
it was a pretty powerful message that he had in there.
I'm trying to think here. What was that movie that just recently came out?
Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
Kevin, didn't Scott say that Missouri is now the 6th in the nation?
It was like
fifth in the nation for sex trafficking. We were 9th, was it correct?
I think so.
Yeah, and we've moved up to 5th.
My goodness.
But now we're coming up on the biggest weekend of the year for child exploitation and child slavery. Super Bowl weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that doesn't register with us, but it's a
Yeah.
well-known fact.
You just wonder why it's Missouri. Everybody says it's Interstate 44. You know,
44 and
I-
I-70, yeah. Yeah.
They say Springfield is just a really big hotbed. So
It's hard to fathom that somebody would exploit a child. I mean, it just kind of, I don't know what the word is. It's hard to wrap your mind around, or my mind anyway. It's hard to wrap my mind around that somebody would abuse a child. And there are times that you hear of children as young as 2 or 3 being abused in whatever way. And I think that the height, at least in my mind, the height of exploitation, whether it's an adult or a child, is when you hear of someone in church leadership exploiting. If you watch YouTube at all, it's all over YouTube about these particularly mega church, and I'm not saying anything against mega churches, but it seems to be central in the mega church world where this exploitation, both of adults as well as children, just seems to flourish.
What is the deconstruction movement? I just heard this term last week, and they were talking about religious leaders that are losing their faith, and the deconstruction movement, where they're questioning their faith and all the principles of their faith. And I was like, we don't need another problem.
Yeah.
But, I remember in '87 when I was pregnant and expecting my daughter, and that's when I first heard about the human trafficking.
Yeah.
And they were doing snuff films with babies. I was ready to deliver.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I wanted to come home.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
To have children and to let them out of my sight.
And when you think about it, there used to be a time when we were kids, you and I, where you could ride your bike, you could, I mean, I remember in our family, particularly during the summer, Mom would turn us loose. Dad was, of course, at work, but Mom would just turn us loose, and we'd be gone biggest part of the day. We'd come home for lunch, but biggest part of the day we'd be gone. You wouldn't think about that now. You just wouldn't think about it. There were times where up in Ellisville now, it was like maybe a couple of miles. It seemed like from our house to where the theater was, Ellisville Theater, and every time we'd be walking in the dark. You wouldn't think about. I mean, you just wouldn't think about doing that now, or allowing your kids to do that now. There's been recent events where school teachers in our area, it's been discovered that they were exploiting students for their own pleasure. It's just rampant. Yeah.
We just finished this past Wednesday night a class on recognizing trafficked children or trafficked people, and it was very, very interesting. And if it's offered again, I would recommend it.
Yeah.
You do that. Shirley Dace was the one who did it. The one of the last things we did was, if you ever see someone go like this,
do it again, hon, for people up here.
Put your thumb in and make a fist. That's a sign for help. So if you see somebody do that, do something.
This has been maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. I was a fill-in school counselor up in Owensville, at Owensville Elementary up there. Went from September through November. so for an entire semester. And the kids that would come in, I don't know how. It gave me a fresh awareness of how do these kids, how do they get up in the morning and come to school? I mean, Viola, she was used to seeing it. Didn't make it any easier, but I had really never seen it. I would see something when they come into the office, but it's different in the office. But when you see it at school, you just wonder, how in the world do these kids survive in the environment? It was starting to get cold, and I remember this one kid, didn't have a coat, didn't have a coat, and was not the most hygienic in the school, and so through different things we took care of the kid, got him a coat. Just the simple things. Parents who exploit their kids, it's a whole different mindset. So God is very very firm in whether it's a fatherless child or a widow or some person. You don't exploit them. You just don't. And if you do, there's a steep penalty for that. Okay. Number 2. Now this is an interesting one here. Lending practices. Chapter 22, verse 25 to 27. This is a good one.
If you lend money to one of my people among you that is needy, do not treat it like a business deal. Charge no interest. If you take your neighbor's cloak as a pledge, return it by sunset, because that cloak is the only covering your neighbor has. What else can they sleep in? When they cry out to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate.
Mm-hmm. Now, let me take that last sentence first here. I will listen because I am gracious. Often, not only in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament as well, you hear the concept, or you read the concept of God seeing his people as his possession, something that is precious to him. Okay? And this comes out in, again, you don't take advantage of people. So, verse 25, if you lend silver to my people. So this is one Israelite lending money to another Israelite. Okay, so this is within their culture. Okay, when you if you lend silver to my people, the poor person among you. Okay, so those, remember, they saw wealth as cattle and sheep, stuff like that. But if a poor person among you, you lend money to that person, you lend silver to that person, you must not be like a creditor to him. And I love this last part. Don't charge him any interest. Now, why is that? Why would he say that? Don't charge him any interest. Don't look at it as a business transaction. Why would he say that?
Because he wants you to do it out of love and not out of profit.
Exactly.
Right.
Because there would be, you've heard the concept of price gouging, right? You've heard about it in the states where the Hurricane Helene hit, and the price gouging goes on there. Different parts of the country, whenever there's a disaster, the wildfire in California, the price gouging that's going on out there, and whenever that's heard, that there's price gouging going on, it's like they clamp down on the price gougers. Same kind of thing here. You must not be like a creditor, not like a business person. You must not charge him interest. Why? Because you don't make money, he's saying here. You don't make money on somebody less fortunate than you are. That is not as financially able as you are. Okay?
Didn't somewhere, I don't know if it's in the New Testament or is it still another place where it says that if you do borrow money or lend money, don't expect to get it back?
That's basically what he's saying here.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what he's saying. And there's just I want to say an age-old concept that if you loan money to somebody, I want to say loan in quotes here. If you loan money to somebody, don't expect that you're going to get it back. Okay, why would that be? Do you think? Why would that concept be a good concept?
Well, that way you have no expectations. You're not putting the pressure on because the person, I mean, I'll be honest with you, when it comes to rental business, the word on the street is go ahead and rent from Stegman because he's just, you know. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I have never expected a late fee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never. The concept was that all I'm trying to do is, you know, get them paid for, and if they can't afford the regular rate or the regular rent per month, how are they going to expect to get a
late fee? Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And they take advantage. They take advantage. They don't pay on time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I promise I'll pay by the 15th. Well, you know, we just got a text message over the weekend. Well, would it be okay if I pay by the 27th? Now, this is for January. I was like, yeah, but you're getting to the end of the month. And, you know, 3 or 4 days, you're going to go back into the next month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
When Jim was in college, we had a friend that sold us some tire rims.
Mag wheels.
Yes, that's what it was. And they were really cool. But they traded on it, so we sold them. We sold them to another friend at a really good deal. We'll pay you. And I mean, we were in college. We didn't have any extra money, and it really. We were good friends up until that point. And you know, so that was, you know, Jim was
Those were nice. They look nice on the car.
They looked a lot nicer on our car than their car. But I mean, no, I mean, we had. I think that the new tires. I don't think we just charged them for the wheels or something. It was really crazy, and we being poor college students, we all understood being broke. But when we saw them going out and buying new clothes and buying this and that, that's
why the concept of you just, and ever since that, because it wrecked our relationship. It just wrecked it. And ever since then, we've adopted that kind of thing. Is you just don't, you know, particularly with family. Family is that's a whole different ball game. You just don't expect it back.
Neither a lender nor a borrower.
Yeah.
Well, that's when somebody, and we've had people that say, "Could I borrow some money?" And Jim looks at me and says, "What do you think?" And I said, "How much can you afford to give them?"
That's what Wayne says too.
Yeah. Look at verse 27. Well, I'm sorry. Verse 26. If you ever take your neighbor's cloak as collateral, okay, return it to him before sunset. Now, wait a minute. If I'm borrowing money and I'm using my cloak for collateral and you have to give it back to me by sunset, what good is it to give it as collateral in the first place? See, what he's doing here, what God is doing is he's laying out a plan for his people that no matter what the transaction is, you don't take advantage. You just don't. So if a person is giving you something for collateral's sake, but in particular here he's talking about cloak, which is a person's outer garment, return it to him before sunset. Now watch. For it is the only covering It is the clothing for his body. What he will sleep in. Or what will he sleep in? Now watch. This is kind of like, okay, you better listen to what I'm saying. Look at it. And if he cries to me, I will listen. And because I am gracious. And what he's saying is, you're my people. And because I am gracious to you, you ought to be gracious to one another. Ooh. And again, I want you to remember now that he's setting out not only for current behavior, but when they settle in the land of Canaan, when they settle there, when for their future, okay, it's kind of like the laws of our country, if you will. They're set up to protect people less fortunate. What is it in the legal world? Everyone has a right to representation in court. Everyone. No matter if you can afford it or not. If you can't afford it, then a lawyer will be appointed and then will be paid by the court. Okay? You will not be out any money. If you can't afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. Okay? That's basically what he's doing here. Is he's setting up not only current behavior, but here's how I want you guys. Now, why is that? Try to translate that into believers today. Would it be right, according to what we're reading here? Now think about this. This is a hard one. Would it be right then, according to God's teachings here, would it be right for a believer to sue the church? Would it be right for the church to say, you know what, the church, we will pay your electric bill for this month, but in return, you must attend 4 Sundays. Would that be right? See, sometimes it's not as cut and dry, right? For me, the answer to that question would be no. It would not be right. I remember when I was in college, we took a trip down into New Orleans. A bunch of us preacher boys. It was school sponsored, but preacher boys, we all went. And we went to a mission down there. It was like a homeless shelter mission thing. And they had a requirement that we will feed you, but you have to listen to a devotional. Okay? I understand that. I mean, I understand that. It gets a little interesting to require something of somebody.
Doesn't School of the Ozarks require? I remember my nephew got in trouble because you have to attend services.
Yes.
So many times a month.
Yes.
And he didn't get his required services
Yep.
in.
They did that at SBU. We were required, if you're a full-time student there, I don't know how they're doing it now, but we were required. Then they had chapel. It was chapel twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday. Okay. And you were required, if you were a full-time student, you were required to go to chapel. No, there were no classes during that. It was like an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. There were no classes, and everyone went to Liberty University is that way.
Yeah,
they
School
require.
of the Ozarks is too.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's another church in town that if you need money or assistance of some sort, they require you to come to a service, and then they'll discuss it with you at the end of the service.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting.
Well, I guess if they're looking for your help, I mean, it's not like you're asking for them to pay it back, but they're still trying the opportunity to talk to you or educate you. I mean, you just can't throw money, good money in after bad money, I guess would be the right thing. I mean, you know, if you're going to help somebody, what's the old saying? If I'm going to help you, you know, I've got the right to at least educate you or talk to you, or is that the right way to look at it, or explain it, or whatever I'm saying? I mean, I mean, yeah, you're a mission, and yeah, you're giving food. But at the same token, as me as an individual, I would think, well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, some churches, I know when I was pastoring, we would not, when somebody came with a need, we would not give them money. We would, you know, buy groceries, or we would pay the bill or whatever, but we would not give them money. And there were people, quite honestly, I may have shared this a long time ago, but there were people when I was pastoring at Calvary, there would be people, because the railroad tracks are right there, there would be people, that I-44 is right there, who would vacation that way. They would go from church to church. And get you to, you know, buy gas or hotel or whatever. And that's the way they would vacation.
Like St. Vincent de Paul, their church, they'll help you, but they're there to help educate you. Like, okay, you know, we want you to be on your feet. I mean, are you doing bad management, bad choices? You know, you can't manage money. What's a little bit of your background, or what can we help you in another?
See, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Asking, you know, well, what's going on? Because if they're habitually that way, I don't remember now whether our church has a limit on how many times you can come back for assistance. I don't know. Do they? Do we?
I help with the mission on Wednesdays, and they have like if say somebody would come in there and say, can you give me some clothes? They'll give you socks, and they'll give you socks, underwear, shirt, pants, pair of shoes. But that's it. That's one time. You can't come back next week. And because one lady came in there, I didn't know nothing about it. I didn't even know they did that. And well, she was just trying to lie and say, well, this person with her had done it, so she was trying to get, double different. And you never can do enough. We had a lady come in there this summer when it was so hot, and she was mad. And she said, "Did we sell fans?" Well, we didn't. We don't. They didn't have any.
Right.
And she started slamming all the churches in town. Well, I'm going to hold this church responsible if something happens to my 88-year-old mom. And I'm thinking, how can you say you're going to hold the church responsible?
Yeah.
But surprisingly, we had a pretty good-sized fan that we set in the middle. So I always work in the back, and it's either extremely hot back there or extremely cold. And the lady that runs it, she said, I will borrow you this fan, but would you promise that you will bring it back? Because, that we use this fan. Shockingly, the lady did bring it back, which I was surprised. Because when she walked out the door, Diane said, I really don't expect to get that fan back, but, we did our part. I mean, we were just trying to help out,
Wow.
I had a lady give me an awful cussing on the phone. We still have whatever it takes in our school system. And she called me up, this was in the early years, and she started telling me that she was from Cuba, and John Hukin told her whatever. I listened to her for a while, and I said, well, we've got a problem. And she said, what's that? I said, John Hukin didn't tell you that. Well, how do you know? I said, because I know John Hukin. And she commenced in, I said, I'm not giving you anything. I said, that's not how this works, by the way. I said, but this is inside the cell of the school district. I can't get it out. And I'm the one who put it in there. I said, man, she lambasted me. Yeah.
And that shows you what the real intent is when they do that. Yeah.
But she didn't call back either.
All right, number 3, real quick. Reaping crops, even. Chapter 19, Leviticus now. We're in Leviticus. Chapter 19, verses 9 and 10. Sorry, Dan.
The sons brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger into the blood and put it on the horns of the altar.
Okay, hold on. Leviticus 19.
Yeah, he's reading the right thing.
Yeah, 9 through 10 it says here.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mine is totally different. Go ahead.
The sons his sons brought the blood to him, and he dipped his finger into the blood and put it on the horns of the altar. The rest of the blood he poured out at the base of the altar. On the altar he burned the fat, the kidneys, and the long lobe of the liver from the sin offering, as the Lord commanded Moses.
I think they put the wrong one in there.
Yep.
Okay, so here's what mine says.
Yeah, they put the wrong. They pasted in. It's the right reference, but they pasted in the wrong.
verse.
The wrong verse. Yeah.
Is that when you reap?
Yeah.
When
So
you reap
okay.
the harvest of your land.
Yeah,
do
that's
not-
the one I've got.
Do not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time, or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the alien. I am the Lord your God.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did yours have your?
Yeah, it's in the. Yeah, they just.
Okay. All right.
It's all just an edit issue.
I wondered at that too. Because I had read
Okay, so now he's talking about, because they were an agricultural people, now he's talked about lending practices, he's talked about, treating the resident aliens. Now he's talking about crops. Remember, he's setting down rules, guidelines, if you will, for the future as well as current. So whenever you reap your land, now watch, don't go to the very edge of the field, and or gather the gleanings of the harvest. We see this in the book of Ruth. Remember Ruth and Boaz? Do not strip your vineyard bare, or gather fallen grapes. Leave them for the poorer people to come and gather them. Now watch, I want to end with this. He says, leave them for the poor and the resident alien. And then he's reminding them, I am the Lord your God. Everything you have comes from me. And so I want you, whenever you get into this land, I want you to start now, but whenever you get into this land, I want you to be a witness to a godless culture, how they are to act. Okay? Again, this goes to God protecting and giving guidance for how the less fortunate and the vulnerable are to be treated. I think if we're honest, our culture has kind of forgotten that. And I don't know, this is just me now, I don't know, and I'm speaking of the Christian community, I'm not sure how good a job we've been doing at that. Particularly when it comes to widows, orphans, and I know Temple does the thing, with all of that, but I'm talking about the Christian community in general. Okay, good guidelines for you and I to apply to where we are currently. Okay, all right. Let's have a word of prayer together. Father, thank you for this lesson that reminds us of those even among us today who are less fortunate, who are poor, those who do not have the means as we do. Thank you for how you have blessed us. Now may we use what you have blessed us with to be a blessing to others. Whether it's financially, whether it's materially, whatever the need, may we stand ready to be a blessing to others. And in doing so, share with them how you have blessed us. And through that action, and through our words, and through our testimony, bring them closer into a relationship with you. Pray, God, that you would watch over us, that you would protect us, particularly in this cold weather season, that you would just watch over us, that you would keep us until we meet again next week. For it's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. Thank you.